Hi, everyone. This is Dawn Richard, also known as The Awakening with Dawn, and this is the Wake Up to Real Love podcast, where we share stories of struggles and triumphs in love, sex, and relationships, along with expert advice to create more conscious connections. I am super honored and excited today because I have a very special expert in the field. Her name is Charlotte Mia Rose. And she believes it is possible to create a fulfilling and delicious sex life, even in a long-term relationship and even while having a family. Oh my gosh, that's possible? She co-hosts the highly popular, informative, and soulful podcast, Speaking of Sex, with her partner in love, life, and co-parenting, Chris Maxwell Rose. Their podcast offers hundreds of hours of free erotic education to anyone ready to expand their capacity for pleasure, love, arousal, and connection. They also offer a full suite of multimedia courses at pleasuremechanics.com, where they teach everything you need to know so you can become a masterful lover and have the fulfilling sex life you deserve. Both trained massage therapists and certified sexologists, Chris and Charlotte believe touch is the foundation of sexual intimacy, and they have gathered their thousands of hours of massage and sex training into practical, effective techniques so you can unlock new realms of sexual pleasure, intimacy, and connection in the privacy of your own home. Their work has reached men and women in over 60 countries around the world. Please come join them in their free course, The Erotic Essentials, at pleasuremechanics.com/free. Welcome, Charlotte Rose.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
When you hear this about yourself, can you believe it?
Yes. Yes. It's been a lifetime of creation.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed. I'm amazed at what is possible in the world, but I feel grateful. I feel grateful and I feel happy that this is what I'm up to in the world.
It's really incredible. And you and I were just, talking before we started this about how you and Chris are opening up this language and this communication and this openness and honesty about sex and intimacy in love and relationships. And it's a bold new concept.
Mm. I think so many of us feel so alone. Like it's a subject that we're not allowed to talk about in culture.
Right.
And so many people struggle with so many aspects of it. But it's even more painful when we can't have an honest conversation with people around us, people we love. It is this one area of life that has so many constraints
Uh-huh.
culturally, personally, interpersonally. And we really just need to be talking about it because the more we talk about it, we realize we're often having very similar experiences.
Yes.
And it eases our hearts and minds to know that we're not alone
Right.
in our struggles.
And thinking
And
I'm not crazy if I'm dealing with this.
yeah, yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's so important. It's so important. And there's so much unlearning to do in our
Yes.
culture to be able to have an amazing and beautiful sex life. It is work. It is a transformation. It is a series of choices that one makes solo and in a partnership in order to be able to undo all of the cultural learning that we've absorbed.
Uh-huh. Now, was sex something that you talked about ever in your home or regularly, or what was that like
Mm.
in your family of origin?
Mm. No, it wasn't. It was something that I asked. I remember being a kid and asking, "What is a blowjob?" Because I had heard, and that expression on my mother's face, like, "This is not something we ever talk about.
Uh-huh.
This is a terrible subject." And that moment where she was like, "It's something that people who love do for each other," and I just knew
Uh-huh.
immediately it was a lie.
Uh,
And it was so I got the charge around it, and that it
uh-huh.
wasn't something that was safe to talk about at home.
Uh-huh.
Um, but with that, my mother had a kind of a sensual awareness that she brought to our life, not in an unboundaried way, but just she loved like beauty um, and touch. She would give us like back rubs at night, so there was like a presence of the body and the joy the body could bring
Uh-huh.
um, in my family. And I feel like that helped me. And we did a lot of sports and I biked a lot. So I was connected to my body and that was safe,
Uh-huh.
which isn't everyone's experience, I know, and I'm grateful and lucky for that.
Right.
Um, but it was just something I was really interested in and I was drawn to, and it became something that other people would talk to me about. And I felt like from being a young age, I was a safe place somehow for people to talk to. And so that has always been in my life.
And so how did you decide to become a massage therapist? You became a massage therapist first?
Yes. I was in like social services working with people. I wanted to see how I could serve people.
Uh-huh.
And that felt very draining. And I wanted something that would feel generative and healing and loving. And so I became a massage therapist. And then I became an erotic masseuse. So in my early 20s, I was doing erotic massage.
How did you transition? Like, what drew you to that?
I mean, I had always been curious again about sex.
Right.
And in our culture, there's not that many ways to really see what's kind of behind the closed doors.
Uh-huh.
And I was curious, and I was young, and being sort of a college educated, I called a number that I saw and was like basically trying to do an informational interview.
Uh-huh.
Excuse me, do you love your work? I'm just wondering if you really enjoy it. And they were like,
Can I get an internship, please?
basically. And I was like, oh, it was like my naivete, like, oh, I get. And I did start doing that work, and I really did love it. It's complicated in our culture, but the experience of giving one-way touch to mostly men, giving them a full body massage, and then giving them erotic massage, it's a really beautiful structure. It's a really extraordinary experience to let somebody just experience pleasure for an hour under your hands.
Mm.
It's not something we get to do much in our life, and especially men do not often get the experience of receiving. I feel like men are taught all the time to be manly. You have to perform, you have to go, 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 and to have them lie down and just receive pleasure there's nothing else to do.
Uh-huh.
In that experience was really extraordinary, just to see how people received pleasure, to see what was possible. There was a lot about the experience that was incredibly beautiful, and I fell totally in love with the technology of erotic massage.
Uh-huh.
And while I was there, it was like so clear that wives were not having this experience,
Right.
Women were not getting this experience, and that obviously is heartbreaking. And so many of the men, I would ask them, why are you here? And they were like, I love my wife. They are not interested in sex and sexuality since they've had kids, was like the most common story.
Right.
And them, it felt like a simple way of getting their needs met, but also being connected to their wife. So I kept feeling like I was thinking about these women and really wanting them to have this experience.
Uh-huh.
So part of stepping out of that and going and get graduate level sexology training was in order to be able to be of service to the couples and be able to be of service to the women in these scenarios where sex has just become something too complicated or too tiring to even be interested in, which is a very, very, very common story in our culture.
Yes. And I think too, because, as babies, we all love to be touched and held and cuddled and nibbled on and kissed all over, and completely non-sexually, right?
Yeah.
But something happens as we grow up where, it becomes less acceptable for boys to be touched and caressed in a non-sexual way. And then women go the other extreme. Women become more sexualized, that it's, you can only be touched in a sexual way. And so I feel like there's this dichotomy of how do we get our sort of nurturing touch needs met, that in a non-sexual way that could possibly lead to a sexual way, or not at all. So this is what I want to talk to you about, because I think it's so important.
Totally, I completely agree. A lot of us are touch starved. And they've done all these studies with kids, like even if they have all their other needs met, if they don't have touch, some of them will get really sick and or die, and it's horrible. But
I know.
And as adults, I don't believe we're that different. I think different manifests in different ways.
Right.
But I do believe we all really need touch. And in other cultures, it doesn't look the same as we grow up. In other cultures, a lot of men will hug and touch and kiss on the cheek. There's a different way men interact, but especially in this culture, most men will not get any touch except from like hugs from kids and their partner.
Or if they play sports, they get pats on the butt.
Right. Or tackled, or, you know, and I
Right.
do actually recommend often for some men who have really high touch needs that like martial arts, wrestling, jujitsu,
Oh,
some of those like for really high libido men that like need more intensity and need more touch. Like it can be a really
uh-huh.
good way of meeting both of those needs,
Uh-huh.
actually.
Uh-huh.
But that's an aside. Um, yes, we need more touch, totally. And so within our relationships, like we're not gonna be able to change the whole culture and like be offering each other more cuddles and hugs, even though I would love that to be the case. So I feel like within relationships is where we can like cultivate just like a higher touch experience.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like giving full body massage and or erotic massage, adding that in, can be a really extraordinary and beautiful experience for people, that really allows them to sink into the experience of being in their body, of feeling the pleasure of being in their body, of tending to one another and nurturing and nourishing one another, and
I
creating like really high levels of arousal and turn on, but like sourced from this place of I love you, I care about you, let me take care of you, which
yes.
is often so much easier for long-term relationships to access. I feel like our culture is obsessed with lust and lusty sex, and like that is
Right.
beautiful and amazing, but over time that does diminish slightly or is harder to generate. But
Right.
like making a date with a partner and being like, I'd love to give you a massage at 7 o'clock on Thursday night. Would you be up for receiving that?
Please, I'll put it in my calendar right now.
Right? It's like a little bit, for some couples, that's a much easier ask. For others, there might be more stuff one needs to do before you get to that point.
Uh-huh.
But it's a much easier way of generating that kind of warmth that then happens when you keep the erotic connection alive between two people over time.
I think that's really important what you said about taking care of the other person,
Yeah.
because especially when you have kids, and I
Yeah.
know, and it sounds like you have been experiencing this, like the majority of your energy is focused externally, right? So you are constantly giving, giving, giving. And then at the end of the day, you're like, well, did anybody give to me? So this was one issue that I had with my ex-partner,
Mhm.
that even though he was sort of taking care of like the responsibilities in the house, I never felt like he was really caring for me. And
Mhm.
that's why I feel like I listened to your 4 types of little 5-minute massages that you can give to your partner. What a beautiful gift, a way to show, hey, I'm caring about you, I'm caring for you. This is something that you can just be open to receive. So you want to talk about that?
Totally. I love it. Yeah, I feel so strongly that giving one another a massage is like putting love in action.
Yeah.
It's like making a practice of it. It's like, let me tend to your body.
Yeah.
There's so much distraction in this world, and let me like put that all aside and just pay attention to your flesh, your, the sensations in my body, in your body.
Uh-huh.
And it's also a one-way touch thing. Sex can be so confusing because we have to pay attention to how we feel, how another person
Right.
feels. It's a lot to pay attention to,
Too
actually.
much,
And like,
too much stimulus.
it kind of is. It can be. It's like a very high level skill. So I feel like to be able to develop those skills, it's a really wonderful place to practice. Just paying attention to what you're feeling under your hands and how much love and pleasure you can be sourcing under them, and like learning your lover's body, helping them relax. Like it gets rid of stress, which is always one of the main things that gets in the way of people's interest in eroticism and
Right.
sex, because we're just too stressed. And so I feel like it does multiple things at the same time. It's like allowing for connection even if you don't have sex. It's allowing for a moment of taking care of one another. It's
Mm-hmm.
helping both of you relax. It's helping both of you get present to your own bodies. It is an act of care, and I just think it is so beautiful. I wish that all bodies could have this skill and be able to offer it to themselves and their partner, because I feel like it creates this circuit of goodness and deliciousness and pleasure and connection that really it's so powerful, and it creates so much more in the relationship. because when you have that connection, just everything feels easier. There's less
Mm-hmm.
arguments, there's less pain, you feel more connected. It's a magical thing, and it is something that we can learn once and then just keep getting better at over time,
Mm-hmm.
and recreating for one another. And I just feel like it's so powerful. I want it for everyone.
So, where do we sign up for the school?
Yeah. Well, I guess you can. You're welcome to come over and sign up at pleasuremechanics.com/free. And there's the foot massage is including then that for free, just because we want people to have a flavor. But then we do have multiple online courses that do teach all of these skills, because that is what we're up to. We want people to have these experiences in their own bodies and in their bedrooms.
And how has it been a challenge for you and Chris once you've had your daughter to still continue to implement and make time to do this for each other?
Yeah. I mean, it takes real commitment and focus and prioritization. It is not easy, especially in those early years when a child just needs so much.
Mm-hmm.
For us, that was compounded by Chris my partner was really ill for 2 years.
Uh-huh.
So I was taking care of a 1-year-old to a 3-year-old, from when she was growing from 1 to 3, and then a sick
Uh-huh.
partner. And it was really what we used, the tool that we used for me to take care of her,
Uh-huh.
at a time when she was not available. We were in survival mode for wild, crazy sex as we had been used to.
Uh-huh.
It was more like, let me just try and tend to you and love you and nourish you as best as I can with what your body needs right now.
Uh-huh.
So it was a way that we stayed connected. It was a way that like our bodies stayed knowing each other and caring for one another. And even if it was in some moments just a hands-on and we're breathing together, it was a beautiful and raw intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Simple, and it really helped us move through a really challenging time.
Mm-hmm.
It reminded us to just be present with one another, to just pay attention to one another.
Yeah.
So sometimes it doesn't have to be for long periods of time. In our culture, we think of a massage as like an hour long. It
Right.
doesn't have to do that. It can be 5 or 10 minutes. Like truly, it does change the body chemistry, and allows us to sink into this like pleasure place, and the relaxation hormones kick in. Like it's so amazing, and it can just be a few minutes. So we did that, and that really helped us.
Because
And then
I,
I also,
I I think a lot of people, say, okay, I don't have the time. And for me, I feel like I don't have the strength.
yeah,
Like you're a massage therapist, you're sort of trained in how to work your body so that you don't get tired. And I just feel like, well, I do a couple minutes and then I'm tired and I can't do it anymore. So how do you overcome those sorts of issues?
well, that's exactly why we wanted to translate everything we had both learned in massage school for people at home,
Uh-huh.
because so much of that is about using your body weight
Uh-huh.
instead of the strength of your hands. And so there are certain positions and certain um, ways of using your hands, your arms, and your weight, so
Uh-huh.
that you're getting a long gliding stroke, but you're using just literally the weight of your whole body,
Uh-huh.
instead of the strength of your hands, because totally your hands get tired, and they are so attuned and have so much skill. They really are best for like small areas, like parts of the neck, but you can kind of use the bigger areas. You can massage the bigger areas first with more like the pressure from your hands,
Uh-huh.
or the weight of your forearm. So these are all the things we want to teach people, so that they don't have that experience of feeling like their hands get tired, because that is so common in so many people's experience, and people don't have time to go to massage school to learn these like tricks from that. And that's
Uh-huh.
exactly what we wanted to translate,
Oh,
so that everyone can have those skills in their hands.
and I love how you talk about, it's really easy to do when you're just sitting on the couch watching TV.
Totally. Just like any amount of touch that you can add in. You're paying a bill at a restaurant, you reach over, you give a little hand massage,
Uh-huh.
take moments from micro massage, we call them. It's just like little moments. And once you have those skills in your hands, you can really share them in many, many moments. And that shifts how you feel about one another, how you feel in your own body.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, that really like moves the needle over many years of how connected you feel to one another.
Yeah, I
It's
was
really
going to say you really feel like present with the other person.
Really. And what I mean, isn't that what we all want? Isn't that what
Yes.
we all need? Like a sense of feeling like this person is here with you and
Yeah.
they're there for you. You are there for them. Like that is the most precious thing.
Yeah. And that you know that you matter to them
Yeah.
because they're taking care of you in a, in this way.
You specifically, I think we all want to be like cherished. And it's a way
Yes.
of being, I am really paying attention to every part of the contours of your hand. I
Uh-huh.
have learned how to do this and I'm paying attention. I am with you. And so it's a really beautiful way of translating all of these values into a moment of
Yeah.
touch.
Yeah. I feel like as women, and you can speak to this as well, that a lot of men get their, touch needs just met sexually. And so in my case, I felt like the only reason that he wanted to touch me was to touch my genitals. And it was like, no, I I mean, if it leads to that, fine, but I don't want that to be the goal. I want you to cherish me and adore me and care for me so that I feel that sense of connection with you. And when I feel that sense of connection with you, then that reduces the stress and it allows me to be more open to receiving as well as giving.
Completely and totally. And that is so many people's experience. I think, like we were talking about earlier, men are often taught that sex is the way to get touch, and they, of course,
Uh-huh.
they may want sex, but they also may really want touch and may
Uh-huh.
not know that um, as consciously. Um, but absolutely, and I feel like massage can be an amazing tool without having sex. Like it's one of the things we recommend people doing is really like making an agreement that sometimes you are having massage just for massage's sake, that doesn't
Uh-huh.
mean that it necessarily leads to intercourse.
Right.
Sometimes it may, and that's a choice. But if we are always thinking that it's going to lead to sex or that it should lead to sex, then often people will say no thank you, I don't want one.
Right.
So kind of making that agreement in your relationship that there are times where you're just touching one another's body without an intention or goal of sex. And I feel like that really frees something up for a lot of women, sometimes for men also, but to just feel like you are honestly with no agenda, just being tended to.
Do you
Because I
do you
think it's,
feel go ahead because you
I just think as soon as we feel an agenda, sometimes like people are like, ew,
ugh,
really?
that feels
Yeah.
yucky.
Yeah. And so it's, yeah, we
It
think of
feels
kind of,
manipulative.
right, right. And that's a turn off. Where if it's like, would you like a foot massage? No strings attached. Like, would you just like a foot
Yes,
massage?
please.
Right? That's like a much easier thing to say. And for some people, sometimes that will lead to a desire for sex because you're feeling connected and you're feeling calmer and less stressed. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes it won't. And that's okay too, but you're still connected and feeling good. And that's awesome. So
Do you feel like this would help people who have, I'll just say, quote unquote, just sexual issues?
mm,
That you can just introduce massage as a way to just reconnect with each other's bodies without having that agenda.
yes, but I would recommend starting slower, like starting just with arm and hand massage or
Uh-huh.
starting with foot massage, like maybe not doing the whole body immediately because there is a
Uh-huh.
sense of vulnerability when you're disrobing and having the whole body exposed. So I would start slowly and also just with hugs so that people are connecting with touch. And if one doesn't want to hug for more than 20 seconds in one go, then there are other relationship pieces to unravel before that. Because we want to if we don't want to hold our lover just like fully clothed and like sink into a long hug, then we don't want to be that close to them. And so there's more to figure out before getting disrobed, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I have heard that 20-second
Yeah.
hug thing. What is the research behind that?
They say that then that's when the oxytocin kicks in, that then the
Uh-huh.
bonding hormones start and it can change your chemistry. But it takes that while for the body to sink into it so that it has a real physical impact
Uh-huh.
on our chemistry that
Uh-huh.
is is that's when we feel bonding, that's when we feel like some happiness and and that totally goes into what you experience when you're experiencing the massage too, right? Because 20 seconds, it's not that long. Like, it's amazing what touch can do. This is why I'm so obsessed.
No, I was thinking like as a baby, oh, I'm sorry, I can only hold you for 10 seconds and then I need to put you down. Like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the cool thing also is once you've learned the massage on the body, like once you take that to the genitals too, like you take the skills of paying attention, of being present, of like listening to what you feel under the hands. And then you take that to like our most sensitive parts, and like you are just going to be a better lover. You're just going to be able to like create more sensation and stimulation and have more confidence in what you're doing. And I just love what it makes possible. It's just because we don't learn how to do that either. We don't learn how to like create high levels of arousal in our partner's body. Like that is a specific set of skills that we don't learn.
No, we
And
don't. I mean, that's one of the
yeah,
things that I've talked to my kids about. You know, their sex education in school was really just about the literal mechanics of
mhm,
intercourse and basically how to prevent STDs and
mhm.
pregnancy. And you know, this is something that, of course, my kids get really embarrassed, like, oh God, here goes mom again. You know, I say you have to talk about the realities of how sex um, is such a factor in relationships, and how sex affects your relationships, how relationships affects your sexuality, and um, you know, how you learn to like take care of yourself and take care of your partner, and all of the many nuances of what goes on in intimate relationships. It's very, very complex. And we all just basically, you know, try to figure it out blindfolded, really.
Yeah, blindfolded with a whole bunch of bad messages also coming in, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, and in that configuration, no one is being taught that pleasure matters. The
Yeah.
pleasure of the woman, the pleasure of the man, that the pleasure is what is the most important thing. There are various sex acts. We have a hierarchy of what we think is more important and less important, and more intimate and less intimate, which, you know, can be thrown out the window. And really, if we just want to focus on how much pleasure can we give one another, we're going to be having better sex. But that takes slowing down, dismantling some really strong ideas about what
Mhm.
sex looks like and what is correct sex and what each gender is supposed to be doing in those scenarios. Like there's a lot to undo in order to feel really good about what you're doing often.
Do you feel like it's more about just being curious and exploring rather than sort of having preconceived ideas and expectations of what, you know, the movies or culture or pornography shows how sex should be part of a relationship?
Totally. I mean, I feel like sex is a place that adults can play together.
Uh-huh.
But to really be able to access that, I do think our brain needs to dismantle a lot of those things that we have been taught. It's hard to be in a state of curiosity and play when we really strongly believe that so many different things that we, you know, that what we've seen in porn is actually how you have sex, that female foreplay, that women experiencing pleasure before having intercourse isn't a thing, you know, like all these pieces we need to undo. And once we've kind of dismantled what traditional culture tells us about sex, then we can begin to have more of a playground to play.
Hmm. Because I think even I can't remember like when I actually learned this, but with my own body, you know, because men arrive so much quicker, right? And for women, it takes so much longer for our bodies to warm up and open up,
Yeah.
literally as well as figuratively. And so, you know, this is something that I've been trying to share with my kids. It's like, well, I have two boys, you know, and I always tell them, you have to please her first because it takes so much longer. You know, I mean, you can arrive quickly, but she cannot. So in order to show her that you're caring about her, you know, you need to be patient and allow her to fully, you know, open up. And I think I honestly think a lot of women don't even realize that, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour takes a long time sometimes.
Absolutely, because we have to stop being distracted. We have to stop feeling stressed. We have to
Stressed.
get in
Hmm.
a state of relaxation and be paying attention to the sensations in our body. There's so many factors that allow for us to start feeling deeper and deeper in our body. And the more that we do that, the better things are going to feel. But
Uh-huh.
yes, it's important for people to know that it can take 20, 40 minutes to an hour for a person with a vulva to feel interested in really having intercourse or feeling interested in sex, in whatever that looks
Having
like.
having desire, feeling that desire.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And there's so much to that, and I think that it's really important that people spend time. We love to think about people doing full body massage and then doing erotic touch on the genitals, and then ideally her reaching high levels of pleasure or orgasm, depending on what her body wants, before
Mhm.
there's any thought of intercourse, because that intercourse is going to feel so much better at that point for her, and for
Mhm.
him he'll be so much more into it.
Mhm.
And him having to extend his pleasure by taking more time, it will feel better for him too.
Mhm.
But that takes a lot of slowing down and a lot of paying attention in other ways, and it's not what we see in porn.
Well, and I also think too, especially if women have experienced any kind of abuse,
Yeah,
there are all sorts of other things that get in the, blocks of feeling safety, right?
oh,
And trust in your partner, and even within your own body.
there's so much there. Yes, absolutely. That is, and a lot of women have experienced their body not feeling safe, and so there is even more care that must be brought to those bodies, and the partners of those people need to learn even more about how we can be bringing like all of our presence and kindness in those moments to keep supporting a person feeling safe.
How do you help women who have experienced abuse learn to do these techniques with themselves so that they can create their own sense of safety within themselves and within their own bodies?
Yeah, that's huge. First of all, I just want to say we have an entire free resource for survivors of sexual abuse and assault over at pleasuremechanics.com. It's totally free, and it's quite a treasure trove of resources
Uh-huh.
that Chris, my partner, has made as a survivor. And so I encourage people to go there and really move through the process, because there's a lot there about how people can be paying attention to their own body, different resources for moving trauma out of the body. Every person is going to be different. It's more of a toolkit model because there isn't one path for every single
Right.
person. It's
Right.
completely different for everyone. My partner really found massage, surprise, to be really essential in her journey, and that's part of why she has such love for this form, is because it was the first place she felt really safe in her body and was able to start paying attention to sensations, and feeling the contours of her body. And it is a helpful tool, and that can start with solo massage or somebody that you really trust, just being with your body. But there are other paths also, to starting to feel safe in your body. But it is a process, and if you can, having a therapist is really wonderful, just the support. But there are a lot of things you can do alone too.
Mm-hmm. And how do you help couples do the same thing? How do you help couples create that sense of safety?
Who have experienced trauma specifically, or just all?
I just think in general.
I mean, there's so much relationally that I think is important about feeling safe and heard and listened to and paid attention to, sort of some of the pieces we were
Cared
talking about.
for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the listening, um, feeling safe, feeling like you're making time for one another, prioritizing. And then when you're together in naked, I think that so much is about slowing down and really listening and making requests and not making assumptions about any kind of touch moving into intercourse. We think about like every time an invitation is made for sex, if you think about being like, you have to go to the whole, there's a buffet that's offered and you're the whole thing, eat everything. And it's like to say no to the buffet. If it's
Yeah.
like, would you like a little bit of this? And then we can stop. Can I rub your back? But just leave it at that. Like it just makes, it takes away the agenda. It makes a person feel safe and cared for. And you can move from there and you can really show your love and care. And I think that that's a really beautiful place to start.
And so do you feel like every sexual experience um, you should, as the person who wants to give, you should always ask? I mean, even with a partner that
Yeah,
how do you show up? Because every time is different.
totally. I mean, I don't think it can ever hurt. I think it's valuable to ask. We are always different. Our bodies are always different in different parts of the cycle, different moods, different levels of stress. Something that's going to feel amazing when you're highly aroused is going to feel awful when you're not aroused at all.
Uh-huh.
Like, we are always in these different states. And I think it's really valuable and respectful to just be checking in with people and asking questions and then moving from there and not making assumptions about what people are available for. I feel like when we can presence, not have these assumptions, but allow for sexual sovereignty, we can really go somewhere deeper and more pleasurable together.
Well, and I also feel like because we are constantly evolving and changing and recreating ourselves, that, what I want and need today is going to be different than what I want and need tomorrow. So, even if I like a particular touch, maybe tomorrow it doesn't feel so good.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that I think in our lifetime, we should expect to go through many different sexual seasons.
Uh-huh.
Like, I think that it is
Like
not
the barren desert sometimes.
totally, and that is totally appropriate, and that makes sense. And we can always return to self-touch and solo touch, and that can be incredibly fertile ground. I really deeply believe that we all are responsible to ourselves first and then to another person. And so making time to cultivate that relationship and find the pleasures is, especially as a new season begins or ends, it's a really wonderful time to really get to know ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know our culture kind of has a lot of different thoughts about solo touch in partnership or not, but I think it's a really, really powerful meditation and laboratory to explore our pleasure and our interests and our wants and our desires. And I also hope and wish that we all will spend more time in our solo sexual self-care that can include relaxation and pleasure. I think that
Yeah,
we can benefit from that.
I feel like, because men's genitalia is out there, it's more common for men to masturbate solo pleasure. But for women, we really have to like make an effort to explore because we don't even see what we have. I remember in college, what was that old book, Our Bodies Ourselves? And we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about, standing on top of a mirror, and it's like, oh wow, I didn't know that I looked like that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And really like giving ourselves permission to explore what feels good for us, and like what spots feel good, where do I feel more aroused, where do I feel more open, what's my process. I mean, it's really getting to know your body,
Totally. And
and many women don't do that.
yeah, 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 yeah. And integrating it as part of your body, just in
Uh-huh.
a way that you know the contours of your face. Um, and some of us put on, lotion after the shower. Like it is just part of touching and tending to our full body
Uh-huh.
and integrating that part of our body so that it can become a place of awareness and then pleasure. But
Uh-huh.
often for people, getting to a place of neutrality is a wonderful place to start,
Uh-huh.
because our culture does tell us all kinds of negative things that we do have to again undo before we can kind of reach this place of joy and happiness.
Well,
Yeah.
I think too, you know what, like we were talking about your daughter's, you know, birthday party that
Mm.
she was at this week. It's like just the joy and the fun and the pleasure and just being in the moment. Like when we become adults, we don't give ourselves permission to go there very
Right.
often. You know, I mean, we're so full of our responsibilities and going to work and paying the bills and taking care of the kids and trying to tend to our partner that it's like, pleasure? What's pleasure?
Totally. It is really a choice. It is in our world, like we are set up to be all about productivity and achievement, and to take and carve time out that is about tending to ourselves and tending to our pleasure and our joy is an effort. It is something we have to prioritize. But when we do, I think that we find that we become so much more resourced from a really beautiful place. And that then we end up feeling better, and so we show up in our world in a more joyful way, in a more kind, calm way, and this contributes to everyone else and everything you care about in your world. So
Mhm.
it's really like a generating force for us to reconnect to ourselves, um, to all things good, I think.
Is this something that you have struggled with, having a child?
Well,
Like,
through those years where my partner was sick and my kid was really little, like and my mother was ill. I was the center of taking care of everyone.
mhm,
And as I said, we've always believed that taking care of ourselves sexually first is of the most importance, and then we share ourselves with a partner next. So it was really an opportunity for me to practice that, and really, really really do that. And I found it so true. It was like I felt like I was working every single moment, and at the end of the day when I was tired, and I would just I challenged myself to make sure I gave myself at least 5 minutes of solo massage.
uh-huh,
So that was on all of my body, not even necessarily genitally, but just like, can I tend to my own body with the care and reverence that I would give another? Can I nourish where I feel sore and tight? And I'm holding a lot, and let me just sink into the pleasure of my own touch and remind myself that I matter, and that I am a source for this family, and let me nourish myself. And it was so profound. It was so profound to just challenge myself to 5 minutes, because once you start, it feels so good. You keep going often. But the brain, if you just tell yourself 5 minutes, and just ask yourself, what do I need right now? What would feel best? And then just start there. It's like you're still gaining those skills. You're still connecting with yourself. It was so powerful. It helped me so much. And I felt like who I could show up the next day as was more resourced. And it was such a simple thing, but I was amazed at the impact of that. And yeah, I want people to know that. So you were talking about women finding it harder sometimes to connect with our own pleasure. And I feel like dancing for 5 minutes and then like touching your body with lotion, doesn't have to be genitally, just like connecting with your own body and like finding what feels good, like asking yourself, what do I need today? Is it my arms that feel tight? Is it my shoulders? Like my butt? Like what, like what would feel good? What can I, how can I serve myself so that
yeah.
I may serve others? And it's a really beautiful, simple, but profound practice.
You're talking to a dancer, so I really resonate with that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one of the spaces where I feel like I can just shut out the rest of the world
Yeah.
and just be in my own presence, um,
Yeah.
just being present, just being in the moment, not really thinking or worrying about anything or anybody else. It's just me and my body and connecting to my body, heart, soul, and spirit.
And
And
don't you feel so much better afterwards?
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I used to, I mean, I still take dance classes, and there was a time that I would go take dance classes 2 nights a week. This
Mm.
was when my kids were a little bit smaller, but you know, my kids would be like, "Mommy, why do you have to go to dance class?" And I said, "Because it makes mommy really happy. And when I'm happy, I'm much nicer at home."
It's a one for one, right?
It is.
When we feel the difference of that, then we get committed to it, because once we really notice that, we're like, oh, I'm doing this for the people around me. If you need to have that external reason, but it's like, it feels so much better when we connect with ourselves in whatever
Yeah.
form. I am such a huge fan of the like 5-minute dance party in the living room. Like if
Yeah.
we're not able to get to a dance class, you know, like it can just shift our mood. It brings us inwards. It presents us to joy and pleasure, and our day goes a slightly different direction after that.
Well, I think
Layer.
I think sometimes as women we don't, because we are caretakers, you know, that everybody else's needs and nourishment is somehow more important or more valuable than our own. And I think that's a real struggle that a lot of women especially have. It's like, no, I'm worth being nourished as well. I'm worthy of being taken care of. I'm worthy of receiving pleasure however, you know, however I desire it. And so it's like breaking all of those societal and cultural expectations, as well as I'm as worthy as you are. So how can I give to myself?
Totally, totally. And it's so important, and it makes so much possible. But if you need the mental hack of like, if I do this, it will help other people around me, because we are so programmed, so many as caretakers, then you can play with that. But yes, ideally, our culture can get to a place where we can think that as women, that we are worthy of taking that time for ourselves, because we
Uh-huh.
matter.
Uh-huh. And
Finding.
how do you navigate that with Chris and with this business of yours?
Mm. We make time for massage. It is our practice. It is
Uh-huh.
our meditation. It is a way of life. Like it's a way that we connect. We have a massage table in our bedroom. I know not
Oh,
everyone will have
yes,
that.
please.
You can do all these things in a bed,
Some
but
people want a stripper pole. I would really like a massage table.
totally right, right. We all have our different orientations. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a practice. Yeah, it's hard sometimes to carve out that space, but every
Yeah.
time we do, it feels incredible. And again, the 5 to 10 minutes, like in bed before going to sleep, it's not a full hour, and those times feel amazing and are so valuable. But 5 and 10 minutes can still have us feel connected, and like it feels so good. And every time we do it, we're like, why don't we do this every single day? We did more when we were younger without kids.
Right. Of course, you
But
have a
now,
little more freedom.
yeah. But any amount, I am amazed at how much of a difference it makes. So anything you can add, I feel like really does make a difference. And so using that to prioritize, remembering that when wanting to prioritize it is helpful.
So it just like little bits of reigniting your connection with each other.
Totally. Yeah, we always talk about keeping warm so it's easier to get hot.
Uh-huh.
Using the massage as a way of just like continuing to be there with one another and
Uh-huh.
remember one another's bodies, and remind each other that we're there.
Yeah, because
Um,
I think that happens in a lot of relationships as people feel cold,
Totally, totally.
right?
But I
You
also want people to know that can return. There are seasons and times when things go cold,
uh-huh.
and that is so normal. But it's also really valuable and important to know that they can be reignited. It
Uh-huh.
is an effort. It is an intention. It is something you choose.
Yes.
But with effort, it really can come back and reignite. Um, but it but it is a choice. It
Yeah.
often doesn't happen just on its own. And so remembering why that matters to you and why you want that for yourself and your partner and your family is important to keep at the forefront of one's mind, I think. Well,
Yeah. Yeah. Because I feel like, I'll just use the analogy of a tree. If you
mm,
plant a seed and you don't water it and you don't fertilize it and you don't give it sunshine, how do you expect it to grow? And we are the same. It's like, so massage and touch and all of those little ways that you tend to the other person's garden, to growing their tree and nourishing and nurturing their own growth. Then you're going to have this big, amazing, strong rooted and beautiful flowering plant once you put in the time and effort. But I feel like a lot of people use the excuse of, oh, I don't have time, or I don't have the energy to make the effort. And then it's like, well, what do you expect is going to happen then?
And sometimes it can feel hard when you don't feel any of that spark or excitement or interest.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that's where just beginning to feel them showing up for you and wanting to help you feel good in a non-sexual way, for
Uh-huh.
instance, would be like a really lovely place to start again. And then you can remember, your body can begin to remember why you chose them out of the billions of people on this world to share your life with,
Uh-huh.
um, and then move from there. Yeah.
I feel like, even though my relationship didn't work out, I have said to a couple people, one of the gifts that I feel like I gave my own kids was that I was very, very nurturing with my touch. I mean, my family that I came from was very affectionate. And so, whenever they were sitting next to me, I'd be like rubbing their back or rubbing their leg or just holding their hand. And, letting my kids, both my boys and my daughter, know that non-sexual touch is important. It just makes you feel good.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, whether that's holding hands, that's more with lovers, of course. But yes, and sexual touch in all ways is so powerful. And I wish that many of us had more people that we could share non-sexual touch with.
Mhm.
In American culture, it's not very common for people to do that with anyone outside of their immediate family. And like a pat on the back or a little cuddle, all those things, they do add up. They really help us as humans.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful giving that to your family.
And so, what do you want to teach your daughter, or how are you going to teach your daughter about all of this?
I really feel excited about teaching her that the body is a place of pleasure, of her own, and it is her own. We do so much talking about consent.
Hmm.
She's 5, but really being clear about when it's okay to touch somebody else, when it's okay to ask somebody not to touch you, to ask permission before touching, all of those pieces. So she just really understands that her body is her own. We always language, we talk about her vulva, we like name all her parts so that she knows that
Right.
part of her body has a name. And just to note that it's not the vagina is the inside
Right.
body. I think our culture doesn't name
Doesn't
the
we don't
outside
we don't even know the anatomy of ourselves.
because it's shouldn't be seen. But that's often where a lot of the pleasure is. So that's why it's important to name. She knows she has a clitoris, just in conversation, in wiping, in
Right.
just very casual ways and in a non-charged way, letting her know about her body and that it is there. When she's exploring touching herself, like, I notice you're touching yourself. Please feel free to do that in your room. It's a private
Hmm.
thing. As she gets older, so like trying not to shame her,
Right.
but also teach her about boundaries. That
Hmm.
this is not something we do in front of other people, just to keep her safe in the world, but also trying to encourage her to know that her body is for her and for her pleasure.
So I'm sure she talks to her friends.
I so, and yeah, all these things, like we are all in an ecosystem together.
Yeah.
Own body, how we treat our children, like that does affect our community. And I
Right.
see that with children on the playground all the time. It's like everything they've learned from their own family culture uh, gets taught to each other, and it's powerful.
Well, and I think it's so important. I mean, I was even talking, my sons, one's 18 and one's 20. And whenever they have friends over, somehow we get into these conversations. And the last time my 18-year-old had some people over, and I was telling them about my podcast, and they're like, "Oh God, Mom, not again." And I said to these girls, especially, I said, "Do you talk to anybody about this kind of stuff?" And they're like, "Oh no, we're too embarrassed to talk to my parents." And I said, "Would you be interested? I mean, they're going to college right down the street. Like, would you be interested in me coming and talking, having some conversations with you young ladies about all of this stuff?" And they're like, "Oh my gosh, that would be so amazing, because how do we learn about this?"
Yeah, that's wonderful. Oh, I hope you do that. What a wonderful opportunity. Just
Yeah,
please
no,
remind them that their pleasure matters, that we are not here just to serve men's pleasure. I know that's what culture tells us, but we have
yeah.
to know our own body and teach men how we like to be pleasured, like
And
how we want
teach
to.
how we want to be pleasured and just how we want to be treated in general.
Yeah, totally. I think having those conversations would be so useful and powerful, and we love that you're offering that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is why I'm showing up to do what I'm doing, is because I want, and why you and Chris are doing the same thing. It's like opening up these conversations so that there is no shame, there is no judgment. It's just a part of our humanity and a part of our life experience. And how can we co-create something better and more conscious and more heart-centered and respectful, and all of these things that we're trying to promote.
Totally, totally. And it's done conversation by conversation, each of us remembering we're not alone. Most of us are totally normal, and I feel like we have so much concern about that. And kind of these conversations allow for that to kind of get dissolved a bit. But yeah, absolutely. Because the more fully we can each show up, the more we can serve each other, our community, the planet. Like we need all hands on deck right now, and at our like highest, like at our most useful. And I really
Yeah.
feel like this is where like feeling like remembering that pleasure and joy feels good in our body, and then serving from that place, we can show up with more stamina, with more oomph than if we're
More
like
life
coming.
force.
Totally. Then if we're coming from a really stressed, panicky
Yeah.
place, which is
Yeah.
also totally warranted in this world right now. So I feel like, yeah, trying to cultivate more connection, more belonging, more
Uh-huh.
joy, like it's just going to serve all of us.
Yeah, yeah. I because I feel like, our purpose here in this earth is to find our combination of passions and gifts and talents and the things that bring us joy, so that we can become the fullest expression of ourselves. And in that way, we feel this love and acceptance for ourselves, and we can share that with other people. And it's just bringing these connections and knowing that there's a unity, for all of us, that we're all connected, that we all struggle with similar issues, that we all want and need the same things, both physically, emotionally, sexually, relationally, that we can all help lift each other up to have this beautiful experience of this human life.
May it be so.
Yeah. Amen.
Do it.
So yeah, you guys are you and Chris, I just like you are my role models. This is how I hope to develop my own work. And I am so happy to share your work with my listeners. It's like I want to reach as many people with all of this stuff so that we can all experience more joy and pleasure and love and connection and um, in our lives. It's really, really a beautiful thing.
Totally, totally. We can do it one conversation at a time, one love embodied practice at a time,
Yeah,
solo partnered, and then we can be more available for our community, like being loving, being kind, being present.
yeah.
So
So,
great.
so
Empowering.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful. So, my last question that I ask my guests, Charlotte, is how do you define real love?
Whew.
I know it's a big one.
Hmm. I think when we can show up for ourselves with kindness and compassion and presence, and then we can be present for others
Hmm.
with that same energy of kindness, compassion, and presence.
Hmm.
When we can be loving without being attached to our ego needs and our unfulfilled needs, but we are coming from a place of how can we be here for you and with you, that we can access real love, when it is truly a quality, when it has a real quality of just presence.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like just being with one another with all of our energy and attention.
Mm-hmm. No expectations, no agenda.
Yeah, I think real love has a real quality of presence and empty presence and giving our full attention.
Mm-hmm. Well, your presence here has been a true gift. Thank you so much for being here, Charlotte.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you
How,
for what you're up to.
Yeah, thank you. So I know everybody's going to want to find you and listen to you and, get all of your content. I mean, you have so many resources. It's so beautiful. So how can people find you and work with you and find out all about all your resources, et cetera, et cetera?
Thank you. We are at pleasuremechanics.com. And if you like the free, there's a free online course, Erotic Essentials, that does have a video guide of foot massage in it, amongst other things. You can come over to pleasuremechanics.com/free and sign up for that. We also have our podcast, Speaking of Sex with the Pleasure Mechanics, where there are 350 plus hours of free erotic education.
Is that all?
Yeah, so far, so far. So come connect with us in those places.
And receive your emails every week with lots of great resources and information. I mean, I've listened to so many interesting podcasts and like Audre Lorde talking about the power of the erotic. I was just bawling my eyes out.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love her so much.
Yeah. So anyways, yes, so much information, listeners. Pleasuremechanics.com, pleasuremechanics.com, pleasuremechanics.com.
Thank you.
So, and for everyone, if you would like what you heard here, please subscribe to the Wake Up to Real Love podcast and share with all of your friends. And if you would like help with heartbreak and betrayal, creating more connection, expansion, presence, and authenticity in your own life and relationships, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at The Awakening with Dawn. And I would be honored to help you find and create more real love in your life. And I think, how I like to end my podcast is something that you talked about starting with yourself, your relationship with your own body and your own pleasure. This is what I'm here to advocate, is that the most important relationship that you will ever have is the one that you have with yourself, so that you can show up, to yourself with your own presence, so that you can show up for your partner, so that you can show up for your children, other family members, colleagues, et cetera, et cetera. It all starts with you and me and these conversations. So I really am so honored that you came here today, and I would love to have you back anytime. Thank you so much for being here, Charlotte.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for doing what you're doing in the world.
Thank you. All right. So listeners, every day, wake up to more real love, and thanks for being here today, and we'll see you again soon. All right. Take care. Bye.